Rent. His kind of pain. You don't get it, Derek whispered, eyes darting. They said they'd take the business if I didn't pay. They said they knew you. They don't, I said flatly. But they will. The next 48 hours were a blur of whiskey and logistics. I could have gone to the police, but the Mirage wasn't pressing charges, yet they were waiting for payment. Derek had already vanished, and I had two choices: let my name rot in Vegas or drag it back through the mud myself. I found Knuckles at a sports bar downtown, surrounded by the kind of men who laugh with their shoulders more than their mouths. He saw me before I spoke, his expression a mixture of curiosity and mild annoyance. "You're Carson," he said, lighting a cigarette he didn't even smoke. "Didn't think you'd show. I'm not here to argue," I said. "I'm here to buy." He tilted his head. "Buy what?" "The debt." "The whole thing." He laughed a deep, gravelly sound. "That ain't how it works, friend. You can't just buy what's owed to me. I can if I pay more than he does." I pulled out a checkbook. Something about the gesture so absurd it silenced the room. "Name your number." He leaned back, studying me. "You serious?" Dead. It took 12 hours, 2 lawyers, and a notary who didn't ask questions. By sunrise, the contract was mine. The $250,000 debt, the interest, the collection, rights all, transferred into my name. Legally, Derek now owed me, and Knuckles worked for whoever held the note. When I told him he worked for me now, he didn't smile. He just exhaled smoke and muttered, "You're either the dumbest son of a bitch I ever met or the smartest. Depends who's asking." I said, "Esh regarde." Guess I'll find out. That was the start of something I still can't decide was redemption or rot. Knuckles became my shadow. At first, I thought I was using him to track Derek, to collect what I was owed. But the longer he stayed, the more I realized he'd been looking for a way out too. Not freedomen like him don't get that, but a new purpose, something that didn't end in broken ribs. He'd drive me to meetings, wait outside like a quiet storm, and when people looked at me now, they looked twice. Fear has a way of straightening deals faster than trust ever could. One night, after a dinner with investors, he asked, "Why didn't you just have him clipped? Be cheaper." I sipped my bourbon. "Because I don't kill liabilities. Frank, I own them." He nodded, slowly. "Guess that makes me lucky." "Don't push it." He grinned. "Wouldn't dream of it, boss." And somewhere between the cigars and the silence, I realized the debt wasn't just Derek's anymore. It was mine too, me owing myself for the years I let greed wear a friend's face. But that reckoning was still ahead. For now, I had a name too. Clear, a business to save, and a man on the run who'd forgotten that I don't bluff. By the time we found Derek, he was living out of a rented villa in Henderson, trying to pass himself off as some kind of consultant. He'd grown a beard, started wearing linen shirts, pretending the desert heat was a lifestyle instead of a hiding place. Knuckles spotted him, first sitting by a pool, sipping something bright and stupid through a straw. "Jesus," Knuckles muttered. "He's tanning with your money." We watched from the car, the AC humming like a patient warning. My jaw ached from how tight I was clenching it. "Get him up," I said. Knuckles looked at me sideways. "You want quiet or public?" "Let's start quiet. See how he behaves." Knuckles got out, rolled his sleeves up halfway, and walked straight through the open gate. Derek didn't see him until his shadow cut across the sunlight. The glass fell out of his hand, scattering ice across the deck. "Frank," he stammered. What the hell are you doing here?" "Collecting," Knuckles said simply. "You got a minute?" I followed a few seconds later. Derek saw me and froze like the air had turned to glass. "Cal," he said, the color draining from his face. "Listen, save it." I sat down in the chair across from him. "You forged my name for $250,000. Derek, I want to know why." He ran a trembling hand through his hair. "It wasn't supposed to look. I had a system. I was winning. But then the Mirage cut my line and you forged my name." I interrupted. "That's not bad luck. That's betrayal." He opened his mouth, closed it again. The silence between us stretched, heavy and hot. Knuckles leaned against the fence, arms crossed, the faint smile of a man watching the world's most predictable movie. "I was gonna pay it back," Derek said finally, voice cracking. "I just needed time. You had 6 months," I said. "You didn't call, didn't text, didn't try. I was scared." Man, his hands were shaking now. You don't know the kind of people I was dealing with. I do, I said, nodding toward Knuckles. You're looking at one of them. Derek's eyes darted between us. You, what the hell did you do? I bought the debt, I said. Yours. Every dollar of it. He blinked. You what? I own it now. Which means I own you. He laughed a desperate, hollow sound. You can't. Jesus. Cal. That's insane. No, I said quietly. That's business. Knuckles stepped forward. Wo de boss plus s'intéresse. You're lucky. He's even giving you a chair to sit in. Derek stood, backing away. You think I can pay that? I don't have anything left. You've got time, I said. And you're going to use it to work for me. He stared, confused. Work for you? Every deal you made. Every contact you burned. Every scam you ran. I want it all mapped out. You're going to help me clean the wreckage you left behind. And if I say no? Knuckles cracked his knuckles, the sound sharp enough. Back. Knuckles nodded. Want me to handle it? I shook my head. No, let's see what kind of hole he digs this time, because by then, I wasn't angry anymore. I was curious. And curiosity, when mixed with power, is a dangerous thing. What I didn't know then was that Derek wasn't planning to escape. He was planning to bury me with a trick so bold it almost earned my respect. It came into the office the next morning with a fresh haircut and a smile that didn't belong on a man in debt. The kind of smile that says I've got something you don't know, and I can't wait for you to find out. Knuckles noticed it too. Why's he looking like a man who just found a winning ticket? He muttered under his breath as Derek walked past the glass doors. Because he probably thinks he did, I said. Let's see what game he's playing. Derek dropped a folder onto my desk with exaggerated care. All squared away, he said, voice chipper, the Rizzo account's cleaned. He's agreed to fold his operations under Carson Group's logistics wing. No more grey money. I raised an eyebrow. Rizzo doesn't fold. He bends until someone's form him direkt smiled wieder. Guess he's evolving. Knuckles leaned forward, cracking a peanut from the bowl on my desk. That's so. What did you trade him for it? Derek hesitated, and in that heartbeat of silence, I knew there was a cost he hadn't mentioned. Nothing serious, he said finally. Just a small, consulting agreement exclusive rights to some of the real estate contacts I've been curating. I closed the folder and pushed it back toward him. Let me rephrase what Knuckles just asked. What did you give him that belonged to me? He blinked, the smile faltering. I told you, it's nothing. The deal benefits you. Cal, it's growth clean, corporate, legitimate. Knuckles chuckled, low and mean. You hear that, boss? Legitimate. That's Vegas code for stolen twice, washed once. Derek's composure slipped. You think I'd risk it after everything? Come on, man, risk implies choice, I said. You're under contract, remember? That means might choose your risks now. He'd his mouth to protest, but he première pique dit up. Carson, the voice on the other end, was one of my auditors from LA, sir. We've got a situation. A wire transfer came through. From the Nevada office last night, $250,000, straight to a shell company in Delaware. The name matches one Derek Lyle used 3 years ago. I didn't look away from Derek as I said, thank you. Pete wire when premier up this was a knife. Derek, I said softly, tell me you didn't just steal from me again. His face went pale. I can explain. You had my name once. I interrupted. You took my reputation, my credit, my signature. You forged it all. And now you had the nerve to use my own systems to move my money. Eluked. Like a man trying to grab smoke. It wasn't like that. I needed leverage. Rizzo, he was pushing me to leverage. I repeated. You forged my name for leverage last time too. Knuckles stepped between us, eyes cold. Want me to take a walk with him? Clear his head a little. Derek flinched. No, please. Cal, listen to me. Rizzo's setting you up. He's been laundering through your properties for months. He thinks you won't notice because he's doing it through companies that I helped form. He said if I didn't help him move that wire, he'd what? I asked. Derek's voice broke. He'd kill me. Knuckles sighed, shaking his head. Guess you should have bet on the wrong guy twice, huh? But I didn't answer right away. Because beneath the panic, Derek was telling the truth, or close enough to it that it smelled right. And Rizzo had always been too ambitious for his own good. I looked at Knuckles. Get Rizzo on the phone. Tell him I want to meet tonight. Derek blinked. You're going to meet him. Cal, that's suicide. He's got guys everywhere. Good, I said. Then he won't have to. Go far when I make him crawl. Knuckles grinned, that feral grin that said he'd been waiting for this. Where? His turf. Downtown. The warehouse by Fremont, the one with the fake security cameras. Knuckles' grin widened. Old school. Derek's voice trembled. You don't know what you're walking into. I know exactly what I'm walking into. I said, standing. The difference is... I'm walking out. That night, the warehouse smelled of motor oil and sweat. Rizzo was already there, sitting on a folding chair in the middle of the floor, pretending he wasn't scared. He wore a cheap suit and a watch that screamed overcompensation. Cal Carson, he said as we walked in, spreading his arms. Didn't think you'd actually show. You got bigger stones than your partner here. Knuckles stood behind me, silent. Let's skip the small talk, I said. You use my companies to move money. That means you owe me now. Rizzo smirked. You can't prove that. Knuckles tossed a file onto the table, between us. Ayere suppuena bank statement here's. Vanished. You son of a... Finish that sentence, Knuckles said. And I'll make sure you're eating through a straw for the next 6 months. Rizzo looked at me, eyes narrowing. You think you can just strong-arm me. You forget who I work for. I didn't, I said. In fact, I called him this afternoon. His face froze. They're not thrilled with your accounting practices. I continued. Said, you've been holding back. Said they'd appreciate someone helping clean the books. He looked from me to Knuckles, panic creeping in. You set me up. No, I said quietly. You set yourself up. I just turned on the lights. Knuckles stepped forward, grabbed Rizzo by the collar and slammed him against the table, hard enough to rattle the legs. Boss ass nice. Use it. I swear. Cal, you just what? I said quietly, thought you could play both sides again. You forged my name, stole my money, nearly cost me everything. And now, you bring a gun to our meeting. Knuckles picked it up, checking the chamber. Loaded, he said. One in the pipe. Derek's voice cracked. I just wanted to disappear. Man, you don't get it. There's no getting out of this. Rizzo's not the end of it. He was middle tier. The real money's higher up, and they're coming. They know you took his assets. Knuckles snorted. You expect us to believe there's someone bigger than Rizzo who gives a damn about your mess. But I believed him. There was something in his voice, a trembling truth you can't fake. Who? Premier Asked. Derek hesitated, eyes darting toward the shadows beyond the fence. You ever heard of a guy named Vincent Maroney? Knuckles froze mid-breath. Maroney, you're kidding. I turned to him. Who is he? Knuckles' jaw tightened. Used to bankroll Rizzo's ops. Real old-school operator. Thinks Vegas is still his city. Problem is, when Rizzo fell, Maroney lost his pipeline. If he knows you took it, then I just became his competition. I finished. More like his target. For the first time in a long time, I felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Derek took a shaky breath. I tried to warn you. He doesn't forgive. A collect? You think you're untouchable because you bought your way out of one problem, but Maroney doesn't deal in paper. He deals in blood. Knuckles stepped forward. You working for him now. That it? You buy yourself a ticket with our names on it. No, Derek said quickly. He doesn't even know I'm talking to you. But once he finds out, headlights cut across the tarmac before he could finish. Two black SUVs rolled in, windows tinted, engines low, and angry. Knuckles swore under his breath. That's them. Get in the car, I said. He grabbed Derek by the collar and shoved him toward our sedan. The SUVs kept coming, tires crunching on gravel. Cal, we don't have time, Knuckles said, but I didn't move. I stood there, watching the convoy roll to a stop, the doors opening, in unison. 4 men stepped out, all in tailored suits that didn't match their faces, cold, practical, efficient. On be them, moving slower, came a man in a white linen jacket, gold rings flashing on his Vincent Marron. Even from 50 feet away, I could feel it, the weight of his confidence. This was a man who didn't walk into rooms. Rooms rearranged themselves to fit him. He smiled when he saw me. Mr. Carson, he called out, voice smooth as old bourbon. Been looking forward to this conversation. Knuckles' hand hovered near his jacket pocket. Boss, he muttered, we gotta move. But I didn't. I took one step forward. Maroney, I said. I hear you've been having trouble with your investments. He laughed, genuine and warm. Trouble? No, just a little. Misallocation of assets. His gaze slid past me to Derek, who was trying to shrink into the car. Though it seems you've been collecting some of my people, not your people anymore, I said. He nodded, almost admiring. I like that. Straight to the point. I can see why Rizzo hated you. Knuckles tensed. What do you want, Maroney? What every businessman wants, he said. Softly, equilibrium. His men fanned out, one hand always just out of sight. Here's how it goes. Mr. Carson, you hand over the accounts, the properties, the clients you inherited. In return, I forget your name. You keep breathing, you keep your toys, everyone wins. And if I don't, he smiled wider. Then I start collecting the old-fashioned way. For a moment, no one moved. The air felt carved in stone. Then I said, tell your men to back off. He tilted his head. You really think you're in a position to negotiate? Knuckles' voice was low. Boss, but I ignored him. I stepped closer. You see, Maroney, the problem with debt collectors is they always assume they're the ones owed. But sometimes the balance flips. Maroney's smile faltered. What the? You implying that Rizzo wasn't your only liability? He was your accountant. I have his books. Every offshore account, every laundering pipeline, every dollar that passed through your hands. If anything happens to me, it all goes public. Interpol, IRS, FBI, you name it. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Maroney's men shifted, uncertain now. Finally. Maroney's more muse-muse-mom. No more threat, just brisk or reluctant. You're a dangerous man, Mr. Carson. No, I said. I'm just one who paid attention. He exhaled through his nose, then turned to his men. Get in the cars. They hesitated. Now, they obeyed. Before he followed, Maroney looked back at me. You win this round. But remember, balances always come due. Even the ones you think you've cleared. When they were gone, Knuckles let out a long breath. You just threatened Maroney with his own books. Jesus, Cal. I turned toward Derek, who was still frozen by the car, shaking. You were right about him, I said. But now he knows about you. Derek's voice cracked. What does that mean? I looked at Knuckles. It means you're not running anymore. Knuckles smiled faintly. Guess you work for us again, partner. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Maroney didn't back off, he regrouped. And when he came back, he wouldn't just come for Derek. He'd come for me. The first sign that Maroney wasn't finished came 3 nights later. A storm had rolled in from the west, drenching the desert and turning Vegas into a mirror of neon and rain. I was in my office, lights low, nursing a scotch and the kind of silence that only ever means trouble. Knuckles stood by the window, watching the sheets of water roll down the glass. You ever notice, he said, how quiet this town gets? Shots, smoke and screams filled the air. When it cleared, Maroney was gone. The back door hung open, the night swallowing him whole. Knuckles rushed to Derek's side. Blood pooled beneath him, his breathing shallow. He looked up at me, eyes glassy. Guess, I finally paid it off. Huh? I knelt beside him, gripping his hand. Yeah, I said softly. Debt's cleared. He smiled weakly. Telknöck. He still owes me $20, and then he was gone. Knuckles stood there, silent. Then he exhaled, slow and heavy. You know, he said, voice rough. He wasn't half bad when he wasn't screwing everything up. I looked down at Derek's body, the flames reflecting in the sheen of blood. He was exactly what this city makes of you when it runs out of mercy. Knuckles nodded. And Maroney, I looked toward the dark doorway. He just made the same mistake Derek did. Knuckles frowned. What's that? He left me breathing. We burned the warehouse before dawn. Not out of guilt, Vegas doesn't leave space for that, but out of necessity. Fire erases what paper can't. Knuckles poured the gas while I stood over Derek's body, the smell of smoke and gasoline clawing at my lungs. His eyes were still open, glassy, reflecting the orange light, as if he were watching the city burn one last time. You sure you want to do it like this? Knuckles asked, Striking the match! Could just bury him. Quiet. Clean. I shook my head. He deserves to go out in the same chaos he lived in. The match hit the ground, and the flames bloomed up like fury itself. Where's toute terre? For a while, watching the warehouse collapse in on itself. I didn't say a word, neither did Knuckles. When the fire trucks came, we were gone. By sunrise, the mirage looked like a different world, bright, sterile, full of people pretending the night never existed. I sat in the cafe overlooking the casino floor, nursing a bitter coffee, while Knuckles flipped through a local paper. They're calling it an accident, he said. Gas leak. No mention of us. No mention of Maroney. Just a dead man and a building full of smoke. Good, I said. He folded the paper, studying me. You don't look good. I just buried the man who forged my name into a $250,000 debt, I said. I'm fine, he smirked faintly. You keep saying that like you believe. I didn't respond. I was staring at the below at the table, it's the dealer smile I'd to forget. And somewhere, in that noise, I could hear the echo of Derek's last words. Guess I finally paid it off. The problem was, debts like his don't vanish. They just change ownership. Maroney didn't disappear. He waited for 3 weeks. Nothing happened. Then a lawyer I'd never met showed up at my office with a smile that didn't reach his eyes and an envelope sealed in red wax. Mr. Maroney asked me to deliver this personally, he said. Inside was a photo, grainy, black and white, taken from a distance. My sister Emma, again, but this time she wasn't alone. She was standing beside a man I recognized instantly, Detective Torres, Metro PD, the one cop in Vegas who still thought he could clean the city. Written across the bottom of the photo were 3 words. She's asking questions. Knuckles was leaning against the doorframe when I looked up. Bad? Worse, I said across the desk. Estudiate whistled at your sister. Yeah, and the guy, cop, Knuckles rubbed his jaw. You think Maroney's feeding? Huh, I think he's building something. He nodded slowly. A trap. I looked down at the photo again. Emma's smile was soft, oblivious. She had no idea what she was walking into. Get me a ticket to Chicago, I said. Knuckles raised an eyebrow. You sure? Maroney wants you to move. You do that, you're playing his game. I know, I said. But the thing about games, Frank, they end when someone flips. The board, Chicago was cold. The kind of cold that cuts through coats and leaves your thoughts brittle. I found Emma outside her office, holding a cup of coffee, hair whipping in the wind. When she saw me, her face lit up. Cal, what are you doing here? You didn't tell me you were coming. I forced a smile. Business trip. Thought I'd drop by. Business trip. She teased. Du alloué, said Chicago. Was too grey for your taste. Still is, I said. You got a minute? We went to a cafe on the corner, quiet, half empty, the kind of place where conversations disappear into the hiss of espresso machines. How's the company? She asked. Busy. She leaned in. Is it true what I've been hearing? About you buying out some casinos, expanding into real estate? Première phrase. Where'd you hear that? She smiled faintly. A friend, Detective Torres. He said you've been making quite a name for yourself in Vegas. Of course she said his name like it was harmless. Torres had always been charming that way. Emma, I said carefully, I need you to stay away from him. Her smile faded. What? Why? Because he's not talking to you, he's talking through. You. Cal, what are you saying? I exhaled slowly. You've gotten involved in something you don't understand. There are people who want to hurt me, and they'll use anyone they can. Her eyes hardened. You mean like Derek? The sound of his name hit harder than I expected. You've been talking to Maroney, I said quietly. She hesitated just long enough to tell me everything. He reached out last week, she said. Said you were in trouble. That you Dandex people. Premier siffletly, her voice trembled. Hello. Road. Boss, I turned to him. I was born on this road. I just forgot where it led. He studied me for a moment. Then I guess we're gonna need an army. No, I said, opening the door. We'll need something better than that. 3 days later, Maroney's world began to unravel. First, his offshore accounts froze every dollar he'd tried to hide, flagged by an anonymous whistleblower, tipped to the IRS. Then his real estate holdings in Clark County went under investigation for tax evasion. Then when Salvatore Slick Marino vanished Earth, That was Knuckles' work. Guy prickly baked Knuckles sash drive on my desk. Had all the dirt we need. Maroney's supply routes, his shell. Companies, even the people he's got in Metro PD. You want to cripple him? This is the spine. I plugged it in. Lines of data filled the screen names, numbers, coordinates. Maroney's empire was a spider web, but every thread led back to one address, a compound outside Henderson, his base of operations, his vault. His home. Knuckles leaned over my shoulder. You thinking what I'm thinking? Yeah, I said. We take it all. He grinned. Just say the word. The night we went after Maroney. Vegas was slick with rain again. Fitting, Knuckles brought a small team 3 men who'd once worked collections with him, ex-leg breakers turned freelancers. They didn't ask who the target was. The money was enough. We parked half a mile from the compound, lights off, the desert humming with insects. From where we crouched, the house looked like a fortress, white stone walls, security cameras, motion sensors. Guys got more hardware than Fort Knox. Knuckles whispered, "You sure about this?" "Yeah," I said, loading the pistol. "But we're not breaking in." He frowned. "Then what's the play?" "Simple," I said. "We make him come out." He chuckled. "You're gonna make the devil leave his throne." Exactly. It started at midnight. One of Knuckles' men, a wiry tech named Weiss, hacked the compound's grid, shutting down power across the estate. Seconds later, the backup generators kicked in, but we'd already spiked the circuits. Half the property went dark. Then came phase 2. Knuckles drove a stolen maintenance truck straight through the south gate. Headlights off, crashing into Marroing Rem à l'Armoiled. Security poured out of the main house like ants from a crack nest. And in the confusion, I walked right through the front door. There smelk en this marble floor. Goldrerim? The kind of place that screamed money made from other people's bones. 2 guards came at me fast. I shot the first in the leg, the second in the shoulder. Both went down screaming. I didn't kill them. Not yet. Knuckles came in behind me, breathing hard, shotgun in hand. He's upstairs. He shouted over the noise. I nodded and took the stairs 2 at a time. At the top, Maroney's office door was open. He was standing by his desk, a pistol in one hand and a drink in the other, backlit by the glow of a single emergency light. "Mr. Carson," he said calmly. "You made good time." I raised my gun. "Put it down." He smiled faintly. "You really think you can kill me and just walk away?" "I don't want to kill you, Maroney," I said, stepping closer. "I want you to feel what I felt, every loss. Every debt. Every goddamn thing you ever thought you could take from me." He laughed, low and tired. "You think you're the first man to come for me with vengeance in his eyes. I buried better men than you. Carson, stronger men, not smarter," I said. That's when the wall behind him exploded. The blast threw us both forward. Maroney hit the floor, his pistol spinning across the tiles. Knuckles stumbled in through the smoke, coughing. Charges blew early. "We gotta move." Maroney groaned, trying to crawl for his gun. I kicked it away and grabbed him by the collar. "You killed my sister." His eyes burned into mine. "No, you did." For a moment, I almost believed him. "14 Thing about men. Like Maroney, they weaponize truth until you can't tell which part cuts deeper. "Go to hell," I said, pressing the barrel to his forehead. He smiled. Already there. The shot echoed like thunder. Knuckles didn't say a word. He just watched as I stood there, breathing hard, the gun still smoking. When we left the house, the fire had already started. Luis had lit the fuel lines. The place went up fast. Flames roared through the windows, curling into the sky like the city's own confession. As we drove away, Knuckles finally spoke. "You know, boss," he said quietly, "there's no going back from this. There wasn't before," I said. "This just made it official." In the days that followed, Vegas changed. Maroney's empire collapsed like a house of cards. His lieutenants vanished, his assets seized, his debts called in by men far more ruthless than me. And somehow, through it all, my name stayed clean. The media called it a criminal implosion. The feds called it a coordinated investigation. But in back rooms and boardrooms, people whispered one thing: Cal Carson doesn't bluff. Knuckles stayed close, quieter than usual. One night, we sat on the balcony of my penthouse, looking out over the strip. "You did it," he said. Whole city's yours now. I poured him a drink. No, Frank, it was never about owning the city. He looked at me. Then what was it about? I stared at the skyline, the lights shimmering like ghosts. Balance. He snorted. Balance. After all this, yeah, I said softly. Even debt. Paid in blood, have to balance eventually. He raised his glass. To balance. Then, we drank. And somewhere far below, Vegas kept humming and moved, unbroken. Already hungry for the next sinner, foolish enough to think they could beat the odds. But as I watched the city that had taken everything and given me nothing but power, I finally understood the truth Derek never could. No one in Vegas pays their debts. They just pass them on. A week passed before I realized I hadn't slept in 3 days. Sleep was for men who still dreamed of redemption. I wasn't one of them anymore. Knuckles handled the cleanup. Et Alwedid. Moroni's ashes were scattered through the city, his accounts. His men, his legacy, all burned to dust and blown into the same wind that carried his name down every casino hallway. But victory doesn't feel like what people think it does. It's quieter, heavier, the kind of silence that sounds like a grave breathing. Vegas started treating me differently after Moroni's fall. People smiled too quickly. They looked away too soon. The city sharks had turned cautious, circling from a distance now. I'd gone from businessman to myth overnight. A man who bought his partner's debt, killed his enemies, and came out clean. My name was carved into the neon, and I hated it. Knuckles showed up at my office late one night, unshaven, smelling like cigarettes and gun oil. He dropped a folder on my desk without saying a word. What's this? I asked. FBI files. He said, sitting down. Somebody opened a case on you. I opened the folder. Photos, transcripts, redacted lines. The file wasn't new. It had been quietly growing for months. My name was all over it, along with Derek's, Moroni's, and even Emma's. Who's running it? I asked. Knuckles nodded toward the last page. Lead investigator, Detective Al Torres. The same man who'd smiled at my sister before she died. I stared at the paper until my knuckles went white. He's still digging. More than that, knukelse-ing something. Word is he's talking to the feds, trying to tie Moroni's death to you. Rika-level stuff. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. So Marrones? Ghost found a new mouthpiece. Guy's a zealot, Knuckles said. You can't scare him like the others. He's clean. I smiled faintly. No one's clean in this city. They just haven't been offered the right stain. Knuckles chuckled darkly. You thinking bribe? I'm thinking conversation. Torres met me in a diner off Flamme Boulevard, one of those crumbs de 70 secondes. The kind of place where coffee never got cold and the waitress could tell if you were lying just by how you held your cup. He was already there when I walked in, blue suit, sleeves rolled up, a look that said he hadn't slept either. Mr. Carson, he said. You look better in person than in my case files. Depends on the photo, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. You ordered. Just coffee, he said. Didn't think we'd have time for dessert. I smiled. You make it sound like an interrogation. It is, he said flatly. Only difference is, this time, the suspect bought dinner. The waitress poured me a cup, then disappeared. I stirred it once and set the spoon down. So, what do you want? Detective. He leaned forward. I swear. You burned Moroni to the ground, but you didn't do it alone. I know about Knuckles. I know about Derek. What I don't know is why half the evidence in your case keeps disappearing before it hits. The DA's desk. Maybe because there isn't a case, I said. He smirked. Or maybe someone's cleaning it up for you. You sound jealous, I said. I sound like a man who doesn't like being lied to. I met his eyes. Then, stop asking questions you already know the answers to. We stared at each other for a long time. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled low and slow over the strip. Finally. He said, your sister didn't have to die. The words hit like a blade under the ribs. She was a good woman, Torres said. Didn't deserve to get caught in your mess. Moroni used her. Yeah, but he wouldn't have found her if she hadn't been looking into you first. I said nothing. My hand stayed flat on the table, steady. She was trying to understand why her brother suddenly became the ghost of Las Vegas, he continued. Now, she's just another cold file in my drawer. Careful, I said quietly. You're trespassing. He leaned back. I'm just doing my job. No, I said. You're looking for salvation in a city that doesn't sell it. He smiled faintly. You think I'm like you. I think you want to be. He stood, tossing a few bills on the counter. Enjoy your coffee, Carson. You're free for now. But everyone runs out of credit, eventually. When he left, Knuckles walked in through the side door. How'd it go? He wants to play hero, I said. Let him. Knuckles frowned. You sure that's smart? Guy's dangerous. So am I said. 2 nights later, I found the bug in my office. Tiny thing, taped under the edge of my desk. Feds were getting sloppy. I crushed it under my boot, then picked up the phone. Je me torres when he answered, except you want to eavesdrop. Bring flowers. He sighed. You're not helping your case. Carson, there is no case, I said. Just ghosts. Then maybe it's time someone buried them. Maybe it is, I said, and hung up. The next, though, call no message. Just gone. His apartment was empty gun, safe open, drawers ransacked. But there was something on the kitchen counter, a single bullet, standing upright, and a note written in his handwriting. Greater than. Debt collected. Don't follow. I stood there for a long time, staring at that bullet. Knuckles had always been loyal to me, to the job, to the code we never spoke out loud. But loyalty in this city is just debt with better branding. And if Maroney taught me anything, it's that debts never really die. T'as vu? Changeant. I poured myself a drink, sat by the window, and watched the sunrise cut across the towers. Vegas was waking up again. The machines were spinning, the dealers smiling, the lights flashing, business as usual. But somewhere out there, Knuckles was collecting on a promise, or paying for one. And for the first time in a long time, I couldn't tell which side of the balance sheet I was on. Anymore. Because, Abby, this not with blood, no we fear, but a negas at all. I'd just become another one of its debts. The sun rose over the Mojave, like it always did slow, indifferent. Gold bleeding into the glass towers of the Strip. I watched it from the balcony of my penthouse, the city stretching beneath me like a map of every mistake I'd ever made. Vegas looked beautiful, from up here. That's the trick of distance it, makes even the ugliest things look pure. It had been 3 weeks since Knuckles disappeared. No trace, no calls, nobody. Just that bullet, that note, debt collected. I turned it over in my hand 100 times, hoping it would tell me which side of the line he'd fallen on. It never did. I wasn't surprised when I saw him again. He came one night, just as the desert wind began to whisper through the blinds. No knock, no footsteps. Just a shadow that moved differently from the rest. Frank, I said without turning, you finally cash in. Guess I had to, he said. His voice was rougher, quieter. Tigana, let you have the last word. He stepped out of the dark. Same leather jacket, same scars, but something in his eyes had gone cold. The kind of cold you only get from doing something irreversible. Where have you been? I asked. He tossed a folder onto the table. Chicago, then DC, then back here. Your friend Torres is dead. I looked up. He nodded once. Came after me. Thought he could flip me. Get you. Turns out he was wrong. I didn't feel relief, just inevitability. And the feds buried the case. With him, I sighed. So that's it. Then Knuckles shook his head. Nah, that's just the paper ending. You and me were still the last of chips on the table. He sat across from me, pulling out a pack of cigarettes. You know, I used to think you were the smartest bastard I ever met. Now I'm not so sure. Why's that? Because you don't even realize you won. I laughed softly. Won what? Frank? Vegas? Power. This? I gestured to the skyline. This isn't winning. It's surviving. He lit his cigarette, exhaling smoke toward the window. You're alive. That's enough, is it? I asked. He didn't answer. Just sat there, staring at the horizon. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt heavier than the guns we used. To carry. Finally, he stood. I'm heading out. Gotta see what's left of the world beyond this neon coffin. You running? I asked. He smirked. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just cashing out, while the house still lets me. He started toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, boss. Derek wasn't wrong. You bought every debt that came your way. Problem is, some things can't be owned. Not really. Like what? People, redemption, peace. I looked at him. You found any of those? He smiled, thin and tired. Not yet. But I'll let you know if I do. Then he was gone. I stayed on the balcony long after he left, watching the strip wake up again. The lights flickered on one by one, like the city couldn't help but confess its sins before breakfast. Then he stood, tugit luked. Smaller, now like a monument to a version of me that died with Derek, with Emma, with everyone who thought debts could ever really be paid. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the bullet Knuckles had left me, held it up to the light. Tiny, perfect, simple, one last balance waiting to be settled. Some debts, I'd learned, don't end when you collect. They end when you stop keeping score. I placed the bullet on the railing and watched it glint in the sunrise. Then I turned away, leaving it there proof that I didn't owe the city, or Maroney, or anyone, anything anymore. Behind me, the wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of the strip waking dice rolling. Cards shuffling, the eternal hum of a town that never sleeps because it never forgives. And somewhere in that sound, I could almost hear Derek's voice again. Guess I finally paid it off. Huh? Yeah, I murmured to the empty room. We all did. I poured myself one last drink, raised it toward the glass in the neon beyond, and smiled a tired, crook smile. Tout debts paid. Premier c'est sauf. Then I shut the lights and walked it out. Into the dawn, leaving Vegas behind, for the first time in my life, owing nothing at all. Tigana, let you have the last word. He stepped out of the dark, same leather jacket, same scars, but something in his eyes had gone cold. The kind of cold you only get from doing something irreversible. Where have you been? I asked. He tossed a folder onto the table. Chicago. Then DC, then back here. Your friend Torres is dead. I looked up. You, he nodded once, came after me, thought he could flip me, get you. Turns out he was wrong. I didn't feel relief, just inevitability. And the feds buried the case with him, I sighed. So that's it. Then Knuckles shook his head. Nah, that's just the paper ending. You and me, we're still the last two. Chips on the table. He sat across from me, pulling out a pack of cigarettes. You know, I used to think you were the smartest bastard I ever met. Now I'm not so sure. Why is that? Because you don't even realize you won. I laughed softly. Won what? Frank. Vegas. Power. This, I gestured to the skyline. This isn't winning. It's surviving. He lit his cigarette, exhaling, smoke toward the window. L-U-A-B. Alive. That's enough. Is it? I asked. He didn't answer. Just sat there, staring at the horizon. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt heavier than the guns we used to carry. Finally, he stood. I'm heading out. Gotta see what's left of the world beyond this neon coffin. You running? I asked. He smirked. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just cashing out, while the house still lets me. He started toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, boss, Derek wasn't wrong. You bought every debt that came your way. Problem is, some things can't be owned. Not really. Like what? People. Redemption. Peace. I looked at him. You found any of those? He smiled, thin and tired. Not yet, but I'll let you know if I do. Then he was gone. I stayed on the balcony long after he left, watching the strip wake up again. The lights flickered on one by one, like the city couldn't help but confess its sins before breakfast. The mirage still stood, though it looked smaller, now like a monument to a version of me that died with Derek. With Emma, with everyone who thought debts could ever really be paid. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the bullet Knuckles had left me, held it up to the light. Tiny, perfect, simple, one last balance waiting to be settled. Some debts, I'd learned, don't end when you collect. They end when you stop keeping score. I placed the bullet on the railing and watched it glint in the sunrise. Then I turned away, leaving it there proof that I didn't owe the city, or Maroney, or anyone, anything anymore. Behind me, the wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of the strip, waking dice rolling. Cards shuffling, the eternal hum of a town that never sleeps because it never forgives. And somewhere in that sound, I could almost hear Derek's voice again. Guess I finally paid it off. Ha! Yeah, I murmured to the empty room. We all did. I poured myself one last drink, raised it toward the glass and the neon beyond, and smiled. A tired crooked paid. Premier se soft glide. Then I shut the lights, left the glass on the table, and walked out into the dawn, leaving Vegas behind, for the first time in my life, owing nothing at all. How could you throw away 40 years of my life? I screamed, my voice breaking as I stared at the empty space where my shelves used to be. The studio, my sanctuary, my second skin was barren. Not a single canvas, not a sketch, not even the crumpled notes I used to pin on the corkboard survived. The air reeked faintly of disinfectant and betrayal. My children stood in the doorway, arms folded defensively, as if they were the victims. Dad, my eldest, Mark, began. We were trying to help. You said you couldn't even walk in here anymore. I couldn't answer. My throat constricted around the words like they were shards of glass. Somewhere beneath the surface of their well-meaning ignorance lay $18 million worth of what they called clutter. My life's work, my art, my story, my legacy gone to the landfill. It all started 23 years ago, long before my hands began to tremble and my children learned the language of worry. I was 32, freshly divorced and living out of a rented studio apartment above a Thai restaurant in downtown Portland. The air always smelled like lemongrass and fish sauce, and for a time, that scent was the only thing that reminded me I was alive. I painted every night, then furiously, obsessively sometimes for 20 hours straight. My art wasn't pretty. It wasn't the kind you hung above a couch. It was raw, loud, dripping with movement and emotion. I called it kinetic abstraction, though most critics just called it madness. One night, my daughter Lucy, who was 8 at the time, wandered into my studio, her hair tangled and eyes heavy with sleep. "Daddy, are you making monsters again?" she asked. I laughed. "Not monsters, sweetheart. Memories." I dipped her tiny hand into blue paint and pressed it against the corner of the canvas. "See that? Now you're part of it," she giggled and ran off, leaving little blue fingerprints on the wall. That piece would later sell for over $100,000, but at the time, I didn't care about money. I was chasing something purer, the feeling that creation itself was proof of existence. When the art world finally noticed me, I was unprepared. A critic named Dana Reeve wrote an article calling me the ghost of Pollock, resurrected with the fury of the digital age. I went from a starving artist to a reluctant celebrity overnight. My paintings began selling for 5 figures, then 6. But fame, like hunger, has a way of consuming what it touches. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I painted through pain, through heartbreak, through the death of my mother, who never understood what I did. When she passed, I painted an entire series using only black and grey pigments made from her cremated ashes mixed with linseed oil. That collection alone, later appraised, accounted for 7 million of the 18. My children never knew. As the years passed, my obsession hardened into solitude. I stopped attending exhibitions. I refused interviews. The world moved on to newer, flashier trends, and I became an artifact of a